I think the digital optimists are people who actually have thought now for some time that the internet and the web and the rise of citizen journalism and user-generated content is actually going to undermine the power, if you like, of the old media barons, people like Rupert Murdoch and so on, and the Disneys and the Vivendis of the world who have dominated the old media now for the last 20 or 30 years. Pessimists are people who actually point out things like the amount of surveillance that goes on the web. For example, every time you go to a website, it plops a little cookie on your hard drive, so it remembers you. Spyware, all that kind of stuff that exists in this kind of dark recesses of the web. In the olden days, in pre-industrial times, for example, the public sphere was literally a public place. It was the town square or the town hall. It was the place where hangings would take place. It was a place where people who had transgressed social mores were put in stocks, and then you could go along and chuck rotten fruit at them. It all took place in a very public space, literally, physical public space. I think today we've seen that the physical public space has been reduced. I mean, there was a story in the media a week or so ago about a council somewhere in New Zealand that had a finance committee meeting, took less than 2 minutes. There's no room for public intervention in that kind of space. But the virtual space now of the web is, if you like, the online public sphere. I think Mackenzie Walk, an Australian academic, said we no longer have routes, we have aerials. And I think you can actually update that now and say we no longer have aerials, we have Wi-Fi. So the public sphere now is actually a much more virtual kind of space. In the United States, in the last few presidential elections, including this one that's going on at the moment, there's been several grassroots political organisations, particularly aimed at young people, first-time voters and so on, who are not traditional media consumers, as we know, trying to actually direct stuff at them through things like Facebook and Bebo and YouTube, to get them to register to vote and to take the election seriously. And I think that that's probably paying some dividends. If you look at the groundswell of support for Barack Obama, for example, coming from college students and young black workers and so on, you can see that that's probably been quite effective. And there's a number of websites set up to try and organise that kind of young person's vote. Whether or not the political parties in New Zealand are up to speed with that and are able to capitalise on those kinds of technologies, I'm not sure. There has been a number of attempts to do things. I know that there's lots of stuff on YouTube about John Key, some of it very unflattering. There's a similar amount of material about Helen Clark that is very unflattering, and probably most of it is produced by party activists. So there are some attempts to do that. Is it good or bad? I think we won't know until we see what the turnout is in the election. If a lot of young people register to vote, a lot of young Māori in particular register to vote, maybe we could say that online campaigning has been successful. I think it's still probably in the very early stages in New Zealand, so it's hard to know what impact it might have on this year's election.